We are now entering the second half of my top 20. The top 10 of my favorite PlayStation 2 hidden gems. So these are the top dogs on my list, and some of them were actually my personal favorites in general. So, where to start? Some game in 2005, I suppose. There was this one game that perplexes me as a kid, and that was the western shooter simply called Gun. Yeah, creative title. That's like if Revolt is actually named RC Cars, and I have no idea who would name their name this simple. Never mind. So what makes Gun so bizarre for me in my childhood, I hear you ask? Well, it's developed by Neversoft. The only thing I knew about Neversoft at the time was its pierced eyeball logo, Guitar Hero 3, and the Tony Hawk games. If you watched this Gong Show dubbed my favorite PlayStation 1 gems video, you notice they also did Apocalypse starring Bruce Willis. Despite playing this on PlayStation 2 hardware, this is the only one on my list I have never owned, previously or currently. Shocker, I know. So 3 years after my family sold the PlayStation 2 and 8 months since I moved in town with my mother. It was complicated, but my parents got back together. During that time we had a new neighbor, who was quite a nice guy, most of the time. My brother and I borrowed his PS2, which he had several games like Gran Turismo 3 and 4, Bully, and Gun. Gun is the one game I was aware at the time, when some redneck neighbors back in the countryside had an Xbox 360, along with this game. I barely played it back then, but when I realized there was a PC version, I got on that horse to play. The game's story, much like other games I mentioned, is nothing for me to give a shit about. It's one of those, they killed my folks and you're gonna pay kind of story set in the Wild West, sprinkled with the old identity crisis stuff. The story is actually well written, had an all-star cast with the likes of Hellboy, Frank Castle, Chief Andy Frazier from Blackstone, and Space Jam's Lola Bunny. But it's a lot more violent than the other western game on my list. Spoilers. You see characters get blown up, heads blown to pieces, decapitations, throats slitting, and among other things, involving heads. The world itself is a pretty landscape for a western setting. You know, the spell, the brown, and the music just fits the tone. You know, it's a pretty good soundtrack, despite being composed by the guy who actually did the Alvin and Chipmunk soundtracks. You know, the live action ones? Yeah. You'll have a diverse set of weapons, from your standard Schofield revolver and Model 1887 with one shot for some reason, to exploding bows and a Remington sharpshooter. You have a quick draw ability which locks onto enemies or projectiles, while having a bottomless cylinder. There are some interesting tidbits in the shooting, like you're able to go in first person if you're equipped with a rifle, bow, or pistols via quick draw, and you can shoot out enemy weapons and projectiles. You could go on side quests like bounty hunting, gathering cattle, play Texas Hold'em poker, and other things. Completing these quests upgrades your character stats, but if you max out your stats, you'd be going John Woo if he ever directed a western film. I've managed to complete this game 100% during my playthrough, and you get extra weapons. The downside is that some of the side quests are somewhat tedious. The difficulty can increase dramatically if you don't do any side quests, and in the endgame, there's no sniper ammo, whiskey bombs, or even dynamite in the open, meaning that they're mostly useless. Apparently there's no New Game Plus, but unless you're able to find an Easter egg where you could at least replay the game's levels and stuff, but that requires a 100% completion to do so. If you're able to get those out of the way, Gun is a decent gem worth getting in your collection, and is also available on PC, GameCube, PSP, Xbox, and Xbox 360. Now go out there and blow some heads off for me.